Guess I'm on. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the house of God. It is with great joy that we say, welcome back, Pastor Diane. You have been greatly missed. And she did not know I was going to do that. I am also honored to be able to introduce our guest minister for today, Reverend David Lindemer.
Very good.
Third try. Not bad. Let us welcome him to the Church of the Good Shepherd. In Christ there is no east or west. In him, no south or north, but one great fellowship of love throughout the whole wide world. Every house has its own character, and it speaks about something of the people who live there. When guests come to the door, how are they received? Welcoming smiles, judgmental glances, fearful reactions, sincere words saying how glad they are to see them. Having dinner with friends and entering into the feeling of family makes us all feel warm, safe, and relaxed. Of course, that means this group called family has a functional family at its roots, not a dysfunctional one. At times, Bob and I will have guests of different races, cultures, ethnicities, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, ages, and occupations sitting around the same table having dinner. I know that as I look at all the faces looking back at me, I see how strong our family is because of that very diversity. I get the same feeling as I look out at all of you. And out in cyberspace, who are all looking at me right now. I feel the significance of God's house. How incredible it is that God the King would invite us into his house, call us his friends, and show us his glory as it is displayed in every corner of heaven and earth. We can see how God uses diversity to create beauty. I love seeing the way people decorate their homes. We were chatting about that this morning, about all the lovely decorations that we see. It reveals so much of those homeowners' personality, their tastes, the things that they like. Often there are pictures of paintings that they may have done themselves, perhaps even a story behind that picture or painting. God's house is a revelation of who he is. His stories, his desires are plastered everywhere for us to see. And as we explore his house, we explore more of his glory. What glory do we see in his house? There is the visible and invisible authority of God, that all things are created by and for him. There is the beauty of the church, his bride. There are the countless testimonies of his love shown in how we love each other. There is the glory of God shown in the magnificence of creation. God's house is right here, all around us. It is here on earth, and it is here with us. The house of God is his presence, and his presence is with us. 1 John chapter 4, verse 16 says, "And we have known and believed the love that God has for us. God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God, and God in him." So, our home is in God. And God's home is also in us. Quite simply, God's house is a place of worship, a life lived loving him continually, filled with his presence, carrying that presence on this earth wherever we might go. Welcome to the house of God. It is our custom to ask if there are any this morning who are visiting for the first or second time. Any here to my right? In this center? I see some, oh yes. Second, yes, I recognize you, but more from the back because I'm usually sitting behind you. But now I recognize your voice. Anyone, oh yes, welcome back. And any here to my left? I had thought to myself, all of your faces look familiar. And welcome all of you who are here today. And welcome to all of you who are out there in cyberspace. I told my sister, who lives in Michigan and who always joins us online, that I would say, "Good morning, Jan." We are so blessed to have all of you with us here today. Let us now join together wishing the following people a happy birthday. Catherine Tracy on the 31st, Flora Cunningham the 1st, Emery Richards the 1st, Jim Gadry the 3rd, Judy Jones the 3rd, Patsy Salvador the 3rd, Samantha McCune the 4th, and Eva Vorst the 5th. And I think before we go any further in the announcements, and there are a few to go through, we have breaking news. And she's breaking down the aisle right now. Here is Miss Elaney with some important news for us to all share.
Hi, everybody. Just your luck, you get to see me twice today. Breaking news. The youth group was graciously donated this beautiful quilt that I'm going to open up now.
Oh, the other side. The blue side is pretty, but this.
Isn't that beautiful? And I will show the choir, too.
Oh, yes. Now you all can see the flip side.
And this beautiful quilt can be yours for only $5 in a raffle starting next week. So the youth group will be out between services selling tickets, $5 a piece. And don't feel bad if you don't win the November quilt. I've heard a rumor that there will be December quilts too. Yes. So drawings will start this next week, and we will announce the winner on December 4th at Alternative Christmas. So come see us next week. Thank you.
That's a beautiful quilt. Today we will be receiving our 5th Sunday missionary offering to support the Presbyterian ministries all around the world. Today and tomorrow are the last days to buy pumpkins. If you would like to back your truck up and I know Rick would be happy to load everything that's out there onto your truck.
The squirrels are first.
Now, this is a new announcement that did not make it to the bulletin, but I will try to give the essentials. Game night will resume on Saturday, November the 12th. I'm being fanned here. I think probably, let's see if I said the organizing committee will be serving a lasagna dinner, asking people to volunteer to bring desserts, and begins at 5 o'clock, and they are not committing to when it ends. Depends on the games, I suppose. Let's see. Oh, yes, if you can bring a dessert, please call Diane or the church. And please sign up on the sheets that will be put out on October 30th, so we'll know how much food to supply. So that sounds like a fun event coming up. There will be a congregational meeting on November the 13th following the sanctuary service for the election of elders, deacons, and nominating committee members. And Dr. Worth invites you to a new members class on Sunday, November 20th, following the sanctuary service. If you're interested in becoming a member of Good Shepherd or would like more information about the church, please join him on that day. Please read all of the announcements in the bulletin. There are a lot of them, and there's so much meaningful information describing the interesting events in the future of our church family. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 3 speaks about how God has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in Christ. We have a God who welcomes and invites us into his house, who wants us to experience everything he has, so much so that he has saved an inheritance for us as co-heirs with his own Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. And now, Amy has some words.
Melanie does.
Oh, all right.
And now, a moment for lay ministries appreciation. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. What for? For supporting the programs, the projects, and the special offerings brought to you by the Serving and Sharing team. I'm Melanie Carnes, and I chair this committee with help from Bob Durstein. And if any of you are a member of the team, a big thank you to you. Would you stand for a moment and let the congregation know who are here? The Serving and Sharing team is the outreach arm of our congregation. We're like the feet on the street and the hand on the land when it comes to supporting missions. If you have a heart for helping others, this is the team for you. If you have responded with a monetary donation to help any of the special offerings this year, or if you've provided an item for Operation Hope, like when we did the backpack drive, or if you joined the recent mission trip to ECHO in North Fort Myers, or if you've ever worked on a Habitat house, or brought food for a Protestant campus ministry dinner at FIT, or brought non-perishable food for the food basket in the narthex, for the Sharing Center, or if you participated in one of our alternative Christmas fairs, or if you've donated your blood at a blood drive here, thank you very much. You are an extension of our team, and we're very much grateful for your support. Our team normally meets at 5:45 the second Wednesday of each month to review what has been accomplished and to plan our future projects. If you have some extra time, please join us. We are responsible for selecting which organizations and special offerings are promoted within our own congregation. Now, a word about offerings. We have a lot of them. And while it would be great for everyone to support every single offering because they're all important, we know that's not reality. But we ask that you listen and give each one your prayerful consideration. And think about it. If you supported one this year, maybe you could support 2 or 3 next year. Grow with it. Think about it, because they are all important. Once again, I thank each of you for being an extension of the serving and sharing team.
Thank you, Melanie.
Now, Ray.
I wouldn't have normally come clear up here, but I want to make sure that the people out there in Cyberland, wherever that's located, you people online get to hear me too. I wouldn't want you to be without it. My mission this morning is to bring you a message about stewardship. Everybody jump up in joy, you know. Isn't this the greatest time of the year when we talk about stewardship? It's been pretty eloquently discussed already by the 2 previous speakers here, Melody and Brenda. And our message today will be talking about stewardship. So I'm not going to belabor it. I'm just going to deal with some physical activities surrounding it, okay, which are, hopefully you had the opportunity to receive an envelope in the mail or pick up an envelope out here that's got the Consecration Sunday commitment card in it. We ask that you prayerfully think about that and think about supporting the church, not necessarily just financially, although that's helpful, but also with your God-given talents. Everybody has talents, all right? Mine's not necessarily brevity. But then again, here I am, and I will be as brief as possible. So that being said, we're all given talents. You have a way to share those talents. We certainly would appreciate it. We need all kinds of different help. The little things, cleaning the church, these kind of things, helping provide for fellowship, being a lay leader, and there's many different things that you can share, and we ask that you consider all those things as we approach next year and we put things together for next year. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would you all stand and join in saying the Apostles' Creed? I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Ghost, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried. He descended into hell. The third day he rose again from the dead. He ascended into heaven, and sitteth on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. From thence he shall come to judge the quick and the dead. I believe in the Holy Ghost, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. Now continue standing and join in singing glorious things of thee are spoken.
Whose
entering confession. If God is for us, who can be against us? Let us confess our sins to the one who searches us and knows us. We confess that we have turned away from you and have not lived upright hearts. Forgive us for failing to follow you. Guide our feet to walk in your ways and serve your world to the glory of your name. Amen. Words of assurance. Your sins are forgiven. Be at peace. For all things work together for good for those who love God. Please be seated. And it is now time for...
After this, after. You can do it now. Go ahead.
I thought it came, well,
Yeah.
time with children.
Oh, no, Diane first, then children.
Make me a servant.
Yeah.
Perhaps it should have been, make me a reader. Let us sing,
Okay.
Make me a servant.
It's a prayer. It's the prayers now.
The Lord's, oh, that's you.
After 6 weeks, yes, it is. Prayers and praise for the following. There is a long list in the office, but most people are recovering. We're happy to see Preston in and out of the hospital this week. I guess he joins the in and the out of the hospital club along with Bill. So, oh, you are the best part. That's for sure. That's for sure, Preston. I'm glad to see that you're doing great, and happy belated birthday also from me. Many people need your prayers, and you can always look at the board out here or in the office and pick up on those people who need them. We have continuing prayers for those who are recovering from surgeries and procedures, and pray that this week I get this third cast off and actually get a walking boot so I can put more weight on my other foot. For our shut-ins, these people especially need prayers, and they need cards, and if you don't have an address, call the office. They will give you one. Janet Bassett, she is still on hospice. Dwayne Koch, you can pray for him. Ivy Lawrence, Shirley Parrish, Artie Richards, who's going to be this coming June, if she's 102 right now, so she's working on 103. Shirley Storm, Don Woodard, Doreen Fenton, and her husband, who's on hospice. Helen Porter, Pete Wilt, Arlene Barstow, Kevin Burke, Carl Vine, who's had pneumonia, and I believe they are looking for another place for him to be. His lungs are very tender. And those with cancer who are recovering or have cancer, and especially Kinsley, Danny Monk's niece. I got another update, and it was that she was going back for some more tests, but she looks good. I mean, I think when we started praying, we weren't sure, but yeah, she looked pretty good. Just keep a lot of these people in your hearts and minds. And next Sunday is All Saints Day, where we are going to be honoring those of our saints who went to be with the Lord this past year. And one special one who was a charter member of our church who had not lived here in a long time. And so if you've never been here for that service, it's moving. And we will be lighting some candles as well as communion next week. Let's bow our heads, our prayer of intercession. We are on a journey of becoming and do not fully know how to pray. Yet the Spirit helps us in our weakness and intercedes with sighs too deep for words. Therefore, let us offer our prayers, confident that the Spirit prays in us according to God's will. Holy God, you have blessed humanity with understanding and the ability to choose the good. Give to all leaders and people a vision of your world made whole, the wisdom to pursue it and the will to accomplish it. You have given your world the gift of Jesus to transform our suffering into healing and hope. Be with all who suffer hardship, distress, or need, and help us to honor you by serving together as we grow in the mercy and compassion of Christ. You blessed us with the gift of creation and call us to uphold its purpose of declaring your holy splendor. Join us with the Spirit's movement in caring for your world, as together we await our redemption from glory into glory. We give thanks for the gift of hope that never ends, and that we are more than victors through him who loved us. We remember all who have died and give thanks that nothing can separate us from you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. And let us pray the prayer that Christ taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And now, make me a servant. Please stand. Children with Miss Elaney again.
I'll be taking, take choir first.
She's coming right after that. Yeah. Here she comes. Yep. You can sit right over there, too. Right, sit right back.
Get comfy.
There you go.
There you are, my dear. I'll trade places.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. Long time no see. I'm Miss Eleni here. I'm putting on my nursery director cap instead of my youth leader cap. I'm here with today's children's sermon. And I gave you guys a break for about a year, but it's time for me to read you guys my favorite book. Who is Sam Harrington? The dreary little town of Coaldale was not a fun place to live. No one showed up for the annual town picnic. Most of the pews in the church were empty, and faces everywhere wore frowns. People passed each other without even saying hello. Old-timers complained about the new folk, and the new folk complained about the old-timers. But one day, everything changed. Sunday morning, Jenny Pepper ran into Coaldale Community Church, knocking Bobby Frank's glasses right off his face. "Hey, watch where you're going, clumsy," he snarled. Jenny was already late. She glanced back, then raced into her class. After the service, people complained as usual about the weather, the mayor, and the price of hamburger. They even complained about Mr. Scritchen, the town grump, because he complained too much. Jenny ran down the aisle ahead of her parents. She put her back to the sanctuary's huge oak doors, braced her legs, and pushed them wide open. "Thank you, Jenny," her parents said, surprised. Jenny grinned. It's what Sam Harrington would do. "Sam who?" her parents said, but Jenny had already run off to their home just down the block. Later on, Jenny saw Bobby Frank again, and he was carrying a wobbly stack of books. And Bobby watched as the school bully rode round the corner towards him. "That's what Bobby gets for yelling at me this morning," she said. But then she remembered Sam Harrington and called, "Look out!" Too late. Rocky's bike brushed against Bobby, and Bobby and his books tumbled to the ground. As Jenny ran over, Bobby growled, "Leave me alone. I don't need your help." "I'm sorry about knocking you down earlier," she said. "I should have watched where I was going." "Oh, that's all right," Bobby said. "You must read a lot. That's why you're so smart at school," Jenny said. "Thanks, Jenny." "No problem," Jenny said. That's what Sam Harrington would do. Then later on, Bobby saw a little girl whose dog was missing, and he helped her find it. And he said that's what Sam Harrington would do. Then the little girl was skipping down the street with her dog, and the school bully had a flat tire. She brought the school bully and his bike to her dad's house so he could fix it. And she said, that's what Sam Harrington would do. "Who's Sam Harrington?" Lydia's father asked. But she didn't know. The school bully was riding his bike, and Rocky had fallen and stubbed his toe. And he helped him get on his bike and pushed him back to his house. And he said, that's what Sam Harrington would do. And it kept going. He fixed his sister's dolly. They looked for the lost baseball glove. And soon, everyone was doing nice things for one another. But no one, not even the old-timers, the new folk, or the children, knew who Sam Harrington was. The man himself was nowhere to be found. On Wednesday afternoon, Mr. Scritchen said, "I've got it. There's one person who knows everybody in Coaldale." Everyone was convinced that Pastor Lyle must surely know Sam Harrington. And the one place they were sure to find the pastor was in the church. So the word spread quickly, and the whole crowd crowded into the church for the Wednesday evening service. Every pew was packed, and there was even standing people in the back. Everyone was whispering, "Do you know who Sam Harrington is? Any strangers here? I heard Pastor Lyle is going to tell us. I hope Sam's here. I want to shake his hand." Well, Pastor Lyle came to the pew. He cleared his voice, and everyone was like, "This is it. He's going to tell us." Then Pastor Lyle cleared his voice and said, "Who is Sam Harrington?" Well, the The whole church sighed in disappointment. Pastor Lyle didn't know. Does anyone know who Sam Harrington is? Silence. Then a small voice piped up. I know who he is, don't you? Every head turned to Jenny Pepper. Miss James told us, she said. Every eye turned to Miss James, the Sunday school teacher. Her jaw dropped, for she'd been asking the same question as everyone else. I'm sorry, Jenny, she said. I've never heard of Sam Harrington. The crowd held its breath and looked back at Jenny. But you told us about him last Sunday morning, Miss James, she said. Remember? Jesus told the story about the man who was hurt, and the good Sam Harrington was kind to him. You said that's what Jesus wants us to do, to be like the good Sam Harrington. There was a half a second of silence, and then all the adults began to laugh. Jenny was more puzzled than ever. Citizens of Coaldale, Pastor Lyle said, Jenny is absolutely right. Jesus wants us to be like Sam Harrington. When Sam found a man hurt on the road, he didn't walk by as others had. No, the good Sam Harrington wrapped the man's wounds and put him on his donkey. Then he took him to an inn where he could get better. Sam's kindness saved that man's life. 3 cheers for Jenny and Sam Harrington. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! That day, the townspeople decided they'd be a friendly, kind town where good deeds happen every day. And Coaldale has never been the same. Now, as you drive into Coaldale, you'll see that the population has grown by 1. I love that story, and it teaches a good lesson. So I want you to try to be like Sam Harrington this week. All right, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for our friends and family. Thank you for our doctors and nurses. Thank you for our teachers and pastors. And thank you for Sam Harrington. Please help those that are sick and hurt and help them find relief in you. Please help us stay healthy and make good choices and come back to church next week in person or through our computer screens. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Bye, everybody. I love you. Have a good week and happy Halloween.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is David Lindemer, and I first want to thank your session and Pastor Scott for inviting me to be here this morning in Pastor Scott's absence to fill the pulpit and share a message on stewardship. One of those frightening words so often. Just a little history. I am a second career pastor. I spent the first, 17 years or something in the transportation business with a couple of big truck lines, did sales, marketing, contract negotiating, that kind of stuff. At 38, I left that behind with wife and 2 young children in tow, and we headed off to seminary in Dubuque, of all places. Served a little church out in the country in a little town called Zwingle, Iowa. Get your map out later, and look it up. But following ordination, I served the church in Farmington, Illinois, think of Peoria, Illinois, and then moved on to a church, a congregation in Dayton, Indiana, think of Lafayette, Indiana. And then we moved here to Florida, and I served as the pastor at Pineda Presbyterian for 7 years. Took a step back, served 2 more years there as the part-time associate pastor, and retired. That lasted 12 days. I was quickly introduced to the Merritt Island Presbyterian Church, whose pastor had recently moved on, and I served there as the part-time interim for about 1.5 years, retired again, and that time it stuck, for which I am thankful. But I'm glad I can be here this morning. One of the things I truly appreciate about the Presbyterian Church USA, and there are many, but one of the things I truly appreciate is the connectional nature of our church. We're not, Good Shepherd is not an island unto itself. You are part of something larger, and because of that, when these opportunities come up, when these needs come up, people like me, old guys, can step in and maybe lead worship for a Sunday, share a message, and see where that goes. You are entering stewardship season, and the challenge for those who preach becomes, in my mind, is, how do you go about this and not have it sound self-serving? How do you go about this, and instead of looking in your new consecration Sunday materials, which I understand you've been working with for years, how do we go about shifting our thought process from what the church needs to what do I need to do? That's a huge shift. I grew up in churches where year after year the theme was the church needs this, the church needs this, hold the budget up in front of the congregation, help us hit it. That just doesn't work for me. And so we try to do this without reference to words like budget or tithe or pledge. The language, we change the language a little bit, and I think it really changes the message that we share. So this morning, I kind of engage in that challenge, and I'd like to start out by reading a passage from the Old Testament, from the book of Micah. And these are familiar. It's chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. Hear what the Lord says. Rise. Plead your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear, you mountains, the controversy of the Lord, and you enduring foundations of the earth. For the Lord has a controversy with his people, and he will contend with Israel. O my people, what have I done to you? In what have I wearied you? Answer me. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery. And I sent before you Aaron, Moses, and Miriam. O my people, remember now what King Balak of Moab devised, what Balaam, son of Beor, answered him, and what happened from Shittim to Galgal, that you may know the saving acts of the Lord. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. And I'd like to turn to the Gospel according to Matthew. I'm going to be reading from chapter 5, again, familiar, verses 14 through 30. For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had the 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been entrusted in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one with 2 talents also came forward, saying, Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I've made 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master replied, You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This is the word of the Lord. Let us pray. God of wonders, through the gift of your Holy Spirit, your word speaks truth. May your light pour over these pages and light up these ancient words so they become new in our hearts and minds. Now, as your word is proclaimed, may we receive what you offer. so we might embrace the life you intend. Amen. One of the things I learned long ago is that when it comes to any passage of Scripture, it's kind of like a diamond with many facets. You can look at it from different directions. You can see different things. You can come away with a different understanding. There are so many ways to look. I've probably heard 150 sermons preached on this passage, and coming from a different approach and coming with a little bit of a different light to see what's buried in all of there. So I come to that saying, well, what does Scripture have to say to us today? Well, thinking about the current world we live in, when you hear the word talent, what do you think of? You think of a natural aptitude, a special gift, a unique skill, perhaps a rare proficiency. We often think of a talent as the ability to do something. Maybe unravel complex math. I used to be able to do that. Today I can't balance a checkbook. Ask my wife. Hi, Carol. Paint like Picasso. I do not have an artistic bone in my body. I was the kid in elementary school art class. The teacher would just walk away shaking her head going, don't know what's wrong with this boy. I just don't get it. It didn't matter what the medium was. It's not there. Dance like Fred Astaire? Absolutely not. But as we look at the Greek New Testament, the word is Talenton. And as I'm sure you have already learned or know, a talenton is a measure of wealth. It is defined as the amount of silver or gold equal to 6,000 denarii, which represents roughly 6,000 days of work for a laborer. That means it would take just a little over 16 years for one laborer to earn the equivalent of one talenton. Can you imagine? So in this parable, the master left each of these slaves with a lot of silver or a lot of gold, and he gave it to them to manage while he was gone. Jesus says to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his ability. The master was not playing favorites. He was making a judgment call regarding the abilities of each of those slaves. And he gave each the amount of money he believed they could handle responsibly. Now, Jesus says the master goes away on a journey. But those slaves, they're really not the day laborer kind of slave. These are people who have some gifts, who have some skills, who know something about money management. And the master has literally entrusted his estate to these people. Think of them as professionals. These people do have some skills. And they're supposed to know what to do. He basically called them together and said, guys, here's my estate. Here's my estate. Take good care of it while I'm gone. Make it prosper. Jesus tells us the slave who received 5 talents, went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more. He doubled the value of what he had been given. The slave who received 2 talents made 2 more talents. He also doubled what had been given to him. And the third slave who received 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. And all of that sets the stage for what comes next. He makes the point that people will be held accountable for their actions, for their decisions, until the master finally returns after a long time to settle accounts with the 3 of them. Now, the placement of this parable in Matthew's gospel, Jesus has already ascended to heaven, and you might say he went on a journey. He's gone on a journey. When will he return? No one knows. Back in chapter 4, Jesus addressed this exact question, and he made it quite clear. About that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Now, we live in these in-between days. Jesus' first coming, Jesus' second coming. And we are expected to put the talents we have been given to work. And just like the slaves in this parable, we're expected to risk something. Jesus' expectation is that all we have been entrusted with will prosper the kingdom. The kingdom. Due to our commitment, due to our efforts, due to our exercising the talents we have been given while he is gone. And when he returns, he's going to ask a very important question. So tell me, what have you done with all I've entrusted to you? What have you done to advance my kingdom? We're told the third slave, who had been given 1 talent, dug a hole in the ground, hid his master's money in the ground. And to be honest, that slave's decision kind of surprises me. It's just, it doesn't seem like the responsible thing to do with that kind of wealth. Today, if I were that third slave, at minimum, might put the money into a CD, as the master suggested. Take it to the bank, take it to the bankers. Put it in a CD. Put it in a money market account. It'd be safe, it'd be insured, and earn what? 0.2% of interest. I don't know what the current numbers are, but it's been a long time since we've seen a good interest rate. If I was a little more daring, I would probably put the market into some kind of equities fund, something like that. And if I was even more daring, I would pull one stock out of the market and, maybe buy some Apple stock. There's a gutsy move. But the people listening to Jesus that day probably weren't surprised by this slave's actions at all. More likely, they would have been surprised by the master's reaction to what the slave had done. Do you remember the parable Jesus told about the pearl hidden in the field? That pearl of great price? And that story connected with the people because burying treasure was a fairly common practice. In times of war, in times of crisis, people would often bury their valuables. Even today, every once in a while, you'll You'll read something about some guy out there, some gal out there with a metal detector, and oh, there's a cache of old Roman coins. You know. And the world in those days was almost constantly in a state of crisis. Many people hid their valuables in the ground. The church I served in Illinois, I had a member there, actually a good friend, and he told me the story one day about his father and the days of the Depression, and how his father would, have a little jar, and he'd fill it with coins over time, and then he'd go out and bury it somewhere on the farm. Okay. Problem is, he never told anybody where he buried them. But every once in a while, my friend John told me that he would stumble across one of those jars. Maybe he's working around a building somewhere, or out plowing in the field, or putting in a new fence post. Could be just about anything. But given the times that John's father lived in, I'm not surprised to learn what his father had done. And I don't think his father was alone. Some things just never change. The third slave acted the way people might expect him to act. They might say he was the prudent one. They might say he was the responsible one. He was the one who acted wisely. And at the same time, people could have easily been critical of the other two for taking the risks they took. They might label them as being reckless, irresponsible. Something we need to realize here. Rabbis referred to the Pentateuch, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, as the precious heritage of Israel. Okay? Israel had been given, you might say, 5 talents to preserve. Could Jesus have been referring to those precious heritage of Israel 5 books? If that were the case, the question becomes, rabbis, what did you do? What did you do with the precious heritage of Israel? Did you preserve it? Did you bury it in the ground? Or did you practice it? Did you invest it? Many people felt they should preserve their precious heritage. For 500 years, since the days of the last great prophets like Micah, they had been persecuted. Life was tough. Life was dangerous. And Israel's mission was to find a way to survive. Years of exile in Babylon, occupation by the Greek, occupations by the Romans. The temple been defiled, desecrated. The very survival of the Jewish faith was at stake. So the rabbis taught that being faithful meant defending, protecting, and burying their precious heritage, so faith could survive and be passed on for generations. You remember when the exiles returned from Babylon and they're digging around in the ruins of the temple and they come up with the 5 books of Moses, and Ezra reads them to the crowd and they weep. God's word had been preserved for them. Preservation is a very human reaction to any kind of threat. Could Jesus have been challenging that attitude about people's faith when the third servant is condemned for doing what any good Jew was supposed to do? Was he trying to revive the ancient prophetic tradition of Israel which flourished before the exile and before the occupations began? I think the prophetic tradition was summarized in Micah's question. And what does the Lord require of you? To do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. In other words, the Lord requires us to practice our faith. The Lord requires us to risk what is precious to us to help faith grow. Jesus entrusted us with his teachings. Some of us apply them to our daily lives. We invest them in the world. But others, they only talk about their faith. And sometimes they don't even do that. They don't do anything. They bury their faith saying, my faith is a personal matter. It's between me and God. Of course, I can't find it right now, but I know my faith is buried around here somewhere. That kind of person doesn't fare well in this parable. You were not entrusted with the gift of faith so you can bury it and to look for it someday when you need it. Your faith is a treasure you've been given, so you might use it, invest it, risk it, develop it, and by sharing the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ to help this world become a better place and to help others come to know the grace of God in Jesus Christ. For me, the idea of stewardship grows from this parable. As you've heard many times, the biblical concept of stewardship has, time, talent, treasure. The Christian faith has consistently affirmed the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world, and those who live in it. That said, understanding this parable has to do with our personal lives. Talents are to be used, developed, improved, exercised. This is the message, I think, of this parable. A talenton is given to us so we can invest it and manage it and risk it and somehow show a profit for God's kingdom. But sometimes we bury our talents for the same reason the servant in the parable buried his. I'm afraid. I don't know what's going to happen. In the church, there are people who have heard the good news and their lives have been changed forever. They decided they would finally do what they always felt they should do, but didn't have perhaps the courage to do because they were told they weren't capable, they weren't worthy. But this parable of the talents says to all of us, you are somebody. God has given you some amazing gifts. It's up to you to use them, invest them, manage them if you like, risk them, develop them, exercise them, so you can ultimately live the life God intends for you to live. But it's not only hearing the gospel, which is important, which is an important factor in people's lives being changed. Equally important are the things we say to one another. Often it's an encouraging word from someone else, someone who says, you can become whoever it is that God wants you to become. You can do it. Too many people never hear an encouraging word. Too many people are ridiculed, ignored, marginalized, pushed to the side. They're told their talents aren't worth anything. So they end up believing they aren't worth very much. So we hope that they will find a way into a fellowship, into a congregation, into a church, where they will hear, you are a child of God. You are a child of God, and you will become the person God created you to be. In fact, the message is really kind of stronger than that. I think the message is imperative. You must become the person God created you to be, because someday you're going to be asked a very important question. So tell me, what have you done with all I entrusted to you? What have you done to advance the kingdom? Don't preserve the talents you've been given. Practice them. Don't bury the talents you've been given. Invest them. Don't protect the talents you've been given. Use them. Don't defend the talents you've been given. Risk them. Someday, hopefully all of us will hear, well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Amen. I think we have a hymn coming up, right? And it's time to stand, if you're able. Come, thou fount of every blessing. So in this stewardship season at Good Shepherd, think a little bit. Take the time. Take the time to think. Take the time to pray. What has God entrusted you with? And we're not talking about budgets. We're not talking about tithing. We're not talking about pledging. In the big picture, what has God given to you? And if we each raise those things up, God will bring them together and help them work together and together produce the fruits of the kingdom. Now, in the power of the Holy Spirit, go into the world to fulfill your calling as the people of God, the body of Christ. You've been blessed, so you might be a blessing. Go giving thanks for this life and the new life you've received. Amen.